thrive off people. So was I scared of traversing lands and oceans alone? Terrified. Was I frightened of the big scary world that little girls are warned against? A place where we can't possibly be safe? Yes. But I decided that some things are more important than fear. Realized that I'm infinitely brave. So I spent 12 days. 12 days with the most important of human beings. Me. For 12 days, I rose and just lived in the concrete streets of New York City, the land of dreams. Marveled in Chicago, a city burned to the ground, but a phoenix, she rose. Maybe I can rise too. You see, I realized there is in fact a difference between being lonely and being alone, and that with age, this mind needs more time to breathe. I realized that it is not enough to want, to dream. I have to get up and grab life. I learned that yes, this world can be big and scary, but it is filled with good and love. Endless love. Hello, so I'm back in New Zealand and that poem was called I Am Enough. And as you can imagine, it was about solo travel. So on the 29th of December, I boarded a plane to New York City alone and I spent 7 days there. 3 of those I spent with a Kentucky, which was amazing and I met the most incredible people, but 4 days I spent by myself. And then on the 6th of January, I flew to Chicago, where again I spent 2 days with a friend, and then the remaining 7 days alone. Now, I describe myself as an introverted extrovert. In fact, according to the Myers-Briggs test I took just the day before I filmed this, I'm 72% extroverted, which is quite a lot. So was I nervous about spending so much time alone? Definitely. But I went anyway, because I've dreamed of going to New York specifically for as long as I can remember. And yes, I know that's cliche, but New York is spectacular. And since no one was free to go with me, I decided to just go by myself. Even though this definitely wasn't a spontaneous snap decision, it was still a really, really hard one. And you know what? Even though I was warned against it, even though people told me I'd get lonely, even though people warned me of the dangers, it is one of the best decisions I've ever made, and I would go again alone, not just to New York, but pretty much anywhere in a heartbeat, which is something I definitely thought I'd never say. So let me run through what I think are a few of the perks of solo travel, because I think there are actually quite a few. First and foremost, I learned to rely on myself. The reality is, when you're alone, you have no one else but you. So if I wanted a picture in front of the Statue of Liberty, if I needed directions to get to the Empire State Building, if I wanted to know how much the tickets were going to be for the Chicago Art Museum, or whatever it may be, I needed to ask myself. After all, there was no one that was going to do it for me. Number 2, it reminded me of the kindness of strangers. I think sometimes it's really easy, especially when you watch the news, to just be scared all the time, but most people are really, really good. For example, the bus driver that let me on in Chicago, even though I had only 70 cents and the fare was $2.50. The NYPD officers that so graciously gave me directions to get home at 4 a.m. on New Year's Day, even though I'm sure they were exhausted. And so many, many more people. I think this trip reminded me of the goodness of human beings and restored my faith in humanity as a whole, which sounds cliche but is totally true. I think this world really is filled with love, and I really do think that most people are good, kind, helpful people. Number 3, I did whatever I wanted when I wanted, which I think is actually a huge advantage. There was one day in Chicago where it snowed, so I woke up and spent 3 hours in bed just working on my novel, and then I watched Friends for an hour or so while having lunch, and then I spent the rest of the day in the sauna. If I was traveling with someone, I probably wouldn't have done that. On another day, I woke up at 8 a.m. and went on a walking architecture tour, even though it was -2 degrees outside. And then there was another night where I watched like 5 episodes of Friends in a row and then decided to go to a comedy gig at 10 o'clock at night. Now, these are all things that I probably wouldn't do if I was with someone else, but because it was just me, I did whatever I wanted, and that was kind of spectacular. And not only is it really freeing to be able to do whatever you want in terms of timing, but also budget. I mean, let's be fair, What I find interesting isn't necessarily what other people find interesting, and people's budgets are not the same, which can sometimes make trips really, really complicated. But when I was by myself, I only went to things that I was interested in, and of course I made sure it was within my budget because it was just me. I didn't have to spend extra money on things that I didn't want to spend money on, and equally I was able to splurge on things that I did want to do, like see Daniel Radcliffe on Broadway. Number 4, it gave me time to really think about what I wanted in my life and really consider my aspirations. And I think that was even more so in New York City when I went to the Historical Society Harry Potter exhibit. I think I've always known inside that I want to write, and being in New York City, being in Chicago, having that time by myself and seeing the work of J.K. Rowling really inspired me and made me realize that if I want to write and I want to publish a book, I can't just sit there and wish for it. I have to do it, and that's exactly what I'm going to do, even if it means waking up an hour early every day before work and writing, because like I said, it's not enough to just want and hope. If I want something to happen, I have to get up and make my dreams come true. And finally, number 5, it made me realize that I'm infinitely brave. Now, I might do a video with just some tips on solo travel. I think I probably will, especially for women. But the reality is, before I went on my trip to America, I was warned by a lot of people to either not do it at all or to be careful, especially because it was right after Grace Mullane's death, which, on a side note, I'd just like to say was really, really tragic. But clearly, even though I was scared and even though lots of people told me to be careful or not to do it at all, I did it anyway. And that was really, really empowering. Now when I get scared about anything, for example, now in a couple of days I'm about to start my job as a graduate optometrist in a new city. I'm moving in with basically strangers, and all my friends live at least 2.5 hours away, as do my family. Am I scared? Yes. Really, really scared and kind of overwhelmed. But I'm reminding myself that just because I'm scared doesn't mean I can't be brave. In fact, I always come back to a conversation between Bran and Ned in Game of Thrones, where Bran asks his dad, "Can a man still be brave if he is afraid?" And Ned answers, "That is the only time a man can be brave." So I guess what I'm trying to say is that this trip and traveling alone was really empowering for me, and that anytime anything big or scary comes up, I can remind myself of the time that I was brave enough to go to New York and Chicago by myself. So if there's anything you want to do, go out and do it, and definitely solo travel. If there's a place that you want to go to and there's no one free to go with you, if you have the money and the time, as long as you're being sensible, and to be honest, I think as a woman you always have to be sensible no matter where you are, I'd say just do it. So until next time, bye.